Hello everyone, welcome to next video. Today it will be a little bit more nostalgic, a little bit more retro, maybe vintage, and it's all because of this camera, the first interchangeable mirrorless camera that Olympus introduced and which I've recently purchased. And before you think that I've lost my mind or got totally empowered by gas buying this camera despite having EM5 Mark III and EP1, please allow me to explain why I've decided to buy it and how much it actually cost me. I've decided to sell my film camera, my analog camera, this Revoflex that you can see here, which is some sort of rebranded Chinon camera, which I truly like, and I think it's a very nice camera. However, for the last year, I haven't used it for the last year. Film photography has become so expensive that I cannot find an excuse for myself to do it. That is why I thought of buying an older digital camera that will have its quirks and challenges just like analog photography has, and thus maybe will give me the same kind of joy. And that's how I found this EP1, which was in a very good price because it was only $61 together with Pentax lens and Pentax adapter. So what I immediately did was to sell the lens that I didn't need for anything and the adapter, and the whole camera turned out to be $22. And that was the price that I was really ready to pay, especially that I had the lenses for the camera, I had the memory card, I had the batteries. Well, the camera came with the battery and with full set or full kit with what the camera originally was coming with. So for this price of $22, at least in the Polish market, I would be able to buy maybe 2 rolls of film, and I wouldn't have anything to develop it. That's why I wanted this camera to be very simple. And why am I saying it's a nostalgic thing? By no means does this camera meet today's technological standards of cameras. And not only is the technology, but also the looks of the camera that it's not up to date. Plus this very copy that I bought, it has its little dents and damages. Also this little wheel of scroll of death, as Emily calls it, it doesn't work. The IBIS does not work in this camera. So as for now, it's a very, very simple machine that has its quirks and has its challenges. And I think it's all these quirks and all these imperfections of this camera that actually have drawn me to it, because it makes me feel it's a little bit similar to an analog photography when you have to stabilize the image with your own body. You need to think a little bit more of what you're doing and how you're framing your shot. And I would like to tell you today why I really like this camera after a while of having it and having it as my everyday carry that is always with me in my bag. As you can see, I paired the camera with my TT Artisan 25mm f2, which looks awesome on this body, and they do create quite a compact setup. It's not the lightest setup you can imagine because the camera itself is quite heavy and the lens is heavy too. But still it's quite a compact setup, and when you compare it to this mirrorless camera that I have here with Revo, that this setup is to substitute. So as you can see here, it is quite noticeably smaller, and the lens does not protrude as much, and it's way cheaper when you take into account the cost. So as you can see here, it's quite small, and this analog camera is quite small in itself, especially if you compare it to like Russian ones like Zenit. So the first factor was that it's quite a small camera, but it's very solidly built. However, the design, as you can see with this shiny metal, is quite 2009-ish. And all these shiny surfaces, they really do tell it's the early 2000s. It can work as a mirror though, because it's not even brushed. and it's not something you can see in the modern cameras these days. Thus the retro vibe or the vintage vibe of the camera. The next real retro vibe comes when you try to turn on the camera. I don't know if you could hear that sound, so let me switch it off and turn it on again. Please listen to this amazing sound. Photographic ASMR. This is what EP1 sounds like when I turn it on. And the next thing that gives me this retro vibe, apart from this lovely green on button that you can see shiny here. So the next thing is the screen. The screen that you can touch if you really want to, but it will bring zero results as it's not a touch screen. And it's a screen that has a very low resolution, and when you cover the lens or when you're in a dark environment, so I would like to show you what it looks like when you actually look at the screen in the dark environment. I'm struggling here to close the lens, but please have a look here at all these matrix-like stripes that are happening on the screen. So as you can see, all these white dots and stripes that are running on the screen, this gives a really retro vibe and retro feeling. When I was growing up, I would use this point and shoot cameras that had these little screens that were truly struggling in the sun and were utterly useless. So I assume that this camera, although I haven't tested it in full sun yet, will also struggle a lot, which will be another challenge. Another downside of this particular camera is that the IBIS is not working, as you can see the blinking icon. And I don't mind it too much because in analog cameras, none of them were stabilized. So it's not a problem at all. And another very retro thing, although I have no idea what the producer have in mind, please have a look at these 4 fantastic buttons. If I were to ask you which one does what, well, that's a riddle. It's a secret. It's a mystery that is to be discovered. And obviously in time you can get used to it, and by pressing it, actually checking what it does. But it is an interesting quirk, especially when you compare it with modern cameras that have all the function buttons with some icons or named. Well, this one has one function button that is actually called function button, but the most important ones, like checking the menu or checking your pictures, they're not. So this gives, for me, this retro vibe that of an equipment, of a camera that requires a little bit more attention, a little bit more consideration. And another thing that I would like to show you is the number of autofocus points, but I'm right now struggling to find how to show this to you, because when I press the info button, the interesting things are showing up on the screen, and I'm trying to find the one screen that would actually allow me to show you the autofocus points. As I press the shutter button, you can actually see how long it takes for the camera to actually write the picture on the memory card. So let me try to turn it into one of the most basic views, so may it be this one. So please have a look here how many autofocus points we have. And I just wanted to mention that autofocus actually works, and it works pretty well. But notice here we've got 3 rows on top, 3 on in the bottom, and 5 in the middle. And that's it. So comparing it to modern cameras, it's really just a few. So what I tend to do, I just put this autofocus point in the very middle, and while having it in the very middle, I do it just as I did using my analog cameras. I focus in the middle and then I recompose, focus and recompose. And this also gives me this like retro feeling, and obviously I have now manual focus lens, but I do it in the same way. There is a setting that I'm reaching or that I'm trying to turn on while I'm focusing with the manual lens. So this is something that I've discovered in this camera, trying it out. So when I have this screen, that in the very middle I have this green square rectangle that shows autofocus. So when it's like that and I press OK button, it will zoom in and I can actually try to focus, which is super helpful, especially when I'm focusing manually, because I can nail the focus and then just press OK again and come back to composing the picture. So all this focus and recompose technique, this gives me this retro vibe. Another very retro thing in this camera that I found is the number of pictures I can take. Please have a look here. I have 73 to be taken, and actually 74 if the card is full, because I just took one picture. And my current settings in the camera are that I'm shooting both JPEGs and RAW files, just because I'm very curious how will I work with the RAW files from this camera. And this setting obviously influences the number of pictures that I can actually take. But thinking of it, when you only have 74 pictures that you can take, it's almost identical to having a half-frame camera. So it's more or less the number of pictures you could take with the original Pen F film camera, or this cute little ones, Pen EE or Pen ES. I don't remember their names, but the cute little half-frame cameras. So having this small memory card in this camera, I work with it a little bit as I would with the analog camera. So until I fill the card, I do not put the pictures into the computer. I wait till I fill the card, and it's only then I transfer them. I also rarely check them, maybe sometimes for focus. I found an old memory card in my drawer, the one that has only 2 gigabytes of storage. So it's too small for me to use in my more current cameras, so I assume I do have it from one of these point and shoots that I had when I was younger. So it just sits in the camera, and I'm very happy with its capacity here. And I really love JPEGs from this camera because they really have, at least for me, this retro vibe. And in the future, I'm planning to play a little bit more with the settings of JPEGs, because as I was showing you in these videos about film simulations for Olympus, you can actually do it on this one too, and achieve even more retro looking pictures. But as for now, I'm shooting mainly black and white. When I started, I did shoot a few pictures in color too, because I was just curious how they will turn out. And as you can see, I'm leaving ISO on auto because I want the grain. The grain is retro and it has this vibe, and these old Olympus cameras, they have a little bit different grain than the modern ones. So basically that's all I wanted to talk about this retro camera. Should you be interested in having like a manual or a walkthrough this camera, feel free to write in the comments. I'll be very happy to make it if there is anyone who would like to know how this camera works, or if you have any questions about it, also feel free to ask me. I'm not planning to sell it. And please do tell me, what is your retro go-to camera in 2025? For me, definitely this camera is my go-to. I don't have the optical viewfinder or EVF of any sort, but I do have a very low resolution screen, which is very retro. And although I do feel content with the set of cameras that I have right now, maybe you would like to advise for others in the comment section. What would you recommend for those who love analog photography but just cannot justify the cost of it? Feel free to do so. Use the comment section. Be kind and happy to advise others. Thank you very much once more for being with me. I do apologize that so few of the videos are in English, but I only have a limited amount of time, as we all do. So I'm happily doing this whenever I can, but I apologize that it's not always there. Anyways, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give thumbs up, subscribe, share it with others, and please come back next time. Oh, and the pictures you saw, the ones in the frame, are the JPEGs straight from the camera. The ones without the frame will be the ones that I edited a little bit from the RAW files. Forgive me the edit, I'm testing a new program.